Hopefully this is sending all right. No one's in yet though, so it doesn't matter. Yeah, the first person in. Hi everybody, how you doing? 13. It's getting better. Hi. We're just waiting for Suzanne to join, and then we'll get started. Can you hear me okay? Is everything okay sound-wise? Just so you know. There you are. Okay, let's bring you in, Suzanne. A second. So look, it sounds perfect. Great. Hello, Ivan.
Hi, it worked.
There you are. It's working.
Yes, it did. How are you?
It's a good quality video as well.
Well,
Perfect.
It's my bathroom in the East Village, so.
Does it get better?
Yes, we're on 13th Street live from my bathroom.
Let's have a look. I think it's good. It's good sound as well. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you really well.
Perfect. What are you wearing there? Sony?
This is a Sony A7R III, which is what I'm currently shooting with, and
Right.
it's got the 35 millimeter Sony Zeiss f1.4.
Okay.
And I also shoot with a Zeiss Batis 25 millimeter, which is a 2.0.
Yeah, getting straight into that. I've noticed I had loads of questions prepared, but I can't be bothered with that. We'll just wing it. What I liked with your stuff is it's so wide.
Yes.
I've always wondered what you're shooting with there actually.
Most of the pictures that I shot with on Instagram are with Fujifilm cameras. I used a Fujifilm X-T2.
You're right.
And an X Pro 2, and I shoot with a 16 millimeter lens. That's the lens that's on the camera almost all the time, and
really
sometimes I have a 14 millimeter.
Right.
I've just switched to Sony because I wanted a full frame sensor.
Yeah.
You know, I needed better image quality. I was struggling with the image quality on the Fujifilms, quite honestly.
Is that because of the in the high ISOs or just?
Yeah. Partly it was due to high ISO issues. I needed to be able to shoot in different lighting situations.
Yeah.
I felt that the Fujifilm didn't handle backlighting very well. If you have a flash, it's great. But basically, I was finding that because of the kind of pictures I shoot, especially on Skid Row, I felt that I needed greater resolution and I needed to be able to depend on my camera sensor in a way that the Fujifilm sensor was honestly letting me down. I was getting weird skin patches, just dead spots, and just dead skin tones sometimes. And I really feel that for certain subjects, higher resolution just makes the picture just scream louder, you know? Yeah. I mean, this camera, the A7R III, I love it, but it is slower for a street camera. The Fujifilm cameras are faster street shooters. There is no doubt. But if you want a camera that you can rely on for image quality, you know, and you want to get published, because that's happening to me more now, I need to be able to have an image quality that's more competitive, quite honestly.
Yeah.
So.
Getting back to first of all, thank you very much for agreeing to do this. This is great.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, of course.
I'm very honored.
I know a lot of our followers. You were requested after the 6 Feet Under interview. It's the next one. Who wants to learn? So now they have you. For those of us, including myself, who don't know, you shoot a lot Skid Row. Where is Skid Row, and what is that?
Okay, so first of all, right now I'm in New York City. Skid Row is in Los Angeles, and during the first year of my photographic journey, which was almost 3 years ago, I discovered Skid Row kind of by accident driving through Los Angeles, downtown Los Angeles. And it's, the way I describe it, it was like kind of falling in love, like getting a huge crush, a photographic and personal crush on a location. Because if you've ever been in Skid Row, it's a relatively large neighborhood, but it's homeless. it's very difficult to describe. I don't want to take too much time describing the location, but I fell in love with the textures and the sounds, and I felt very compelled to record what I saw in kind of a classic street photography way. And it required a great deal of work on my part to get into the neighborhood and be able to walk the streets with the camera safely. So it's something that I will continually return to, although I'm not there now.
Yeah.
I will document it for as long as I'm able to physically be alive to do it.
Yeah, we spoke about that on the, before we went live, and it's an unavoidable subject. We have to talk about it. Is this? I don't know of any other photographer on Instagram. I mean, for me, if you was going to identify with gritty street photography, I don't know of any other photographer. There probably is, but there's anything like what you're doing. It's like it's hard to describe. You're right. It's almost like you're touching them with a lens. I mean,
yeah, sometimes.
Yeah, but I mean that's what creates these sort of unique angles and unique. It's also with the wide angle and stuff. You sort of know your pictures. You can see your pictures straight away. But like we was talking before, how do you get that? I mean, people are afraid to walk up to someone on the street, just a normal person. Now you're dealing with people that are in, you know, certain situations that, like you're saying, it's a dangerous situation, I guess, in a lot of.
So are you asking me how I do it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
to be honest with you, when you have a true desire for something, it's kind of like I describe it as being true desire. I really, 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 really wanted to do this. I thought that it was really important to document. I found the people to be really compelling, and I worked my way in slowly. You get to know people. The thing is, to do work like this, you have to really like the people that you're photographing, and they have to be able to see that. And the other thing is, because of my own background, I have a background. One of my parents had a significant problem with substance abuse, and I grew up in a really unstable and difficult environment at times. So for me, I connected with a lot of the people, and I felt that I had never seen images of the place as it really looks. I mean, even the LA Times, I recently had a feature for my street photography in the LA Times, which I'm grateful for, but they didn't use any of my Skid Row images, only the street photography Skid Row images.
right.
And I was surprised by that, and I'll tell you that there are very few real images of Skid Row that are really there. You know, mostly it's tents, it's homeless. It's that whole homeless word.
Yeah.
The word homeless conjures, you know, images of, you know, gray lumps of people that are faceless and dirty. And there's a lot of personality there, and there's a lot of things that happen that are really funky and crazy and interesting. And I was very motivated to show that. And to do that, you have to be willing to walk around by yourself and take the risk. And when people see you doing that, I think that they realize that you're for real. I was very serious about it. And I never really felt threatened there. I felt far more threatened, you know, in Paris and in other places than there.
Have you been shooting a lot in Paris, or?
I was in Paris last year. I did a lot of pictures there. I really love Paris. It's a whole different approach to photography. I lost a lot of followers when I went to Paris because I think people put you in a pigeonhole, and you're branded. I never want to be branded in my photography. I want to be free to do what I want to do and what I think is important. In Paris, I felt much more threatened, though. I was constantly on guard with my camera, way worse than Skid Row ever was. So.
What we get them from the followers to Instagram. I noticed we put up on one of our stories. We put a picture of that you have on your feed. Instantly got banned because it went against Instagram's policy.
I'm going to be honest with you about that. That makes me very angry, and I'll tell you why. Because that photo didn't really have any nudity in it.
No,
There was just the curve of a rear end.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful image, if I say so myself, because I love the people in the picture. I think people flag stuff like that because I'm not sure what the real motivations are. I don't think the religious right is observing the photo and flagging it. I think that when you look at Instagram, you look at how many bikini bodies and how many Brazilian waxes that you can minutely examine and string bikinis and bare rear ends, for that to get flagged, I think it's a problem. And I think that social media is a problem for all of us.
Mm. I feel as well that Instagram definitely, I mean, I myself fall into the Instagram trap of I was talking about it today as well with a friend of mine, that if one of my images doesn't get enough likes, I want to take it away. Do you know what I mean? And then I sort of, now I'm in the silhouettes vibe, but I mean, you're also, as we were talking, if you would put a nature image up on your, I don't know how your followers would react. It would be,
well, here's the deal. Okay, when you're on Instagram, people are going really fast. I've watched people on the train, on the subway, scrolling through their Instagram feed, liking stuff, not liking stuff, and they're adults, and it looks really lame to me. It's almost irritating. I'm like, why didn't you like that picture? That's mean, you know? But I think that people don't really pay attention. Right before we did this, I posted an image that I wanted to talk about, and I decided to delete it because I thought it would be too many posts for me. I already posted an image of Doreen today, so I deleted it. But I don't think that people spend enough time on the picture to really appreciate a subtle image.
no.
I think that when you delete an image because it didn't get enough likes, it's sad, because a lot of the pictures that get a lot of likes aren't that good. They're popular images, but they're many times banal appreciations, especially of street photography. A lot of what's really popular, it's not really street photography. It's a concoction of some kind. It's photography. It might be technically very correct, but street photography at its heart is social documentary work. And as a social documentary photographer, it's important to understand that we want to bring images of our world to our followers so they can see stuff that they've never seen before. And if you're pulling pictures down because they didn't get enough likes, partly the reason for that is that Instagram's algorithm does not favor stuff that's really artistic. It actually favors stuff that's middle of the road and that will please the most people.
Yeah, the masses.
Yes. So when that algorithm changed, what it did was it put in the hands of the average user the ability to control what we all see. And average users should never be arbiters of great art. So you have to really think hard before you pull a photo down. I follow some people that are great artists, a few of them from Israel, and they're amazing photographers. And you know what? I see pictures that get more likes, that are hugely popular, that don't even come close to these photos. And so we really have to get away from this whole likes thing. I suffer from it too. I'll put a picture up that I think is very artistic and takes a lot of timing and intuition to take a street photo, and it doesn't do very well. But I have other photos that I think are really mediocre that have like a lot of likes, like a surprising amount.
Yeah,
so,
I've noticed it's a snot. Whereas before, the older days of Instagram, it wasn't the same. Now with this algorithm, it feels like if you're up to 100, 200, 300 likes, and then it allows you to spread more, and then all of a sudden you're allowed to grow. But like you say, we have photos that I feature on Capture Streets, and the team features that, you know, the person has 1,200 followers and they've put up 3,000 pictures, and all those 3,000 pictures are amazing, but they never ever grow. And they have 40 likes, 30 likes, 50 likes, 60 likes. And they can't get past this sort of, there's like a plateau, and they don't get viewed.
Here's the deal. The reason that I'm sorry, I get really upset about this. My account used to grow really, really fast, and when they changed the algorithm, I don't grow very quickly because I don't appear on the hashtags. So what you're saying is that your pictures don't appear on the hashtags unless it's like a quick hit of a drug. You know what I mean? And that's what people want a lot of times on Instagram. They're looking for that freaky picture. They're looking for that really cool kind of shadow color play that grabs their attention right away. And it's a formula, it's a gimmick, you know, and when you're a practitioner of this art form, you have to bear in mind that you can't just shoot for a gimmick, and you can't post pictures on your feed that are a gimmick. And that's what the algorithm feeds off. It feeds off people's natural inclination to want stimulation. They want the stimulation of some picture that's, you know, not necessarily the most subtle form of the art, you know.
Yeah.
And
it definitely works. It's definitely got something to do also with the comments, with the amount of comments that a picture gets in a certain time, because these people have these comment pods where
exactly, I know.
Someone would put a picture up and then they'd all comment, and then the comments would make it spread because Instagram thinks that people are liking it, and then it becomes like this, and then it's sort of, I think you lose the whole point of taking a photo if you're just going for the likes and the followers. Then you sort of, it diminishes the whole point of it, really.
Somebody's saying stimulation to grow their audience. No. What I'm trying to say is that if you don't mind, I want to comment on this.
Yeah, of course. That's
when I say stimulation, I mean visual stimulation. I mean, for example, if I post a really funky picture, it's going to get a lot of likes because the picture stimulates the viewers to look more closely. When you post a photo that is more subtle and that may be more artistic, and less of a punch in the face, it may not get as many likes as the punch in the face photo. I have a picture I posted 3 months ago of an old woman smoking at night on the street. And it utilizes depth of field. It focuses on her hands and the cigarette, and it's black and white, and her face is faded. I thought this picture was pretty mediocre, and I put it up, and it got a lot of likes. And it's a gimmick. It is not one of my best pictures. And I have other photos that I post that I think are more meaningful, more subtle, and less banal that don't get any attention. And yes, the comment pods. I think that those comment pods can artificially inflate people's egos, and it's not good for any of us. You know, we really have to strive to create great art, and the likes on Instagram can be very hurtful. When you see something that isn't that great, is pretty mediocre, and it has a ton of likes. I don't know. I don't want to say it's mediocre because I have mediocre stuff that's got a lot of likes. I hate to say it, but one of the things that I think is interesting about Instagram is there seems to be a lot of very inoffensive images. For instance, I call it the pretty picture mentality.
Yeah.
The images aren't offensive. They don't necessarily tell a story. They have a lot of attention. They get a lot of likes. They're pleasant pictures. But they don't tell the story of the place that the person took the photograph in. So an example is yesterday I was on 34th Street between 6th Avenue and 7th Avenue. And that is a really busy part of Manhattan. It's Macy's, Herald Square. And to be honest, the entire block, which is a huge block, smelled of vomit. It was ridiculous. I could not escape this odor, okay? And I dodged it. I tried to move, and I couldn't get away from it. I don't know where it was coming from. But part of street photography is photographing elements of the street that aren't pleasant. And when you have a lot of really popular images on Instagram, stuff that gets endorsed by companies, these photos are 50 feet off the ground in Manhattan, and they're photographing kind of a myth of Manhattan. They're not really telling the story of what the people look like, and doing that with a narrative photograph.
The lookups and the drones and the
yes. So just because it's got 10,000 likes does not mean that the picture resonates, has emotion, means anything. It can mean that it's a technically excellent image. It can mean all of those things, and it has meaning for people to look at, and it's not a bad thing. But unfortunately, as a society, I think that we are really becoming more and more detached from one another. We spend more time online. So images that are real, very realistic, in-your-face images aren't necessarily always popular because they can be difficult to look at and they require the viewer to make a connection with another human being, as opposed to a constellation of shapes and colors and shadows that are, you know, becoming too popular in street photography, in my opinion.
Definitely fallen into that, personally fallen into that trap of taking those kind of images. I was just thinking about it today, just looking, you know, everyone does it, looks back in their feed and you can see your own development and progression. And it is easy to blast out a silhouette photo and you know you're going to get 300-400 likes, and then you do another one and it just gets 20 or 30. So you usually take that back and put another. It's easy to fall into that trap. Definitely easy. I think.
Look, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Somebody wrote. Somebody said that it's demoralizing as a photographer. A little bit earlier as a photographer, if you put up photos that you really like yourself and you get 12, 30 likes on them. I understand that.
Well, you know what? At the end of the day, there are people that have won World Press Photo Awards and Pulitzers and who work on the Washington Post who have 5,000 followers or way fewer, and those people's pictures get seen by the world. Definitely. Okay? And then there are people with 80,000 or 150,000 followers or however many, 60,000, whatever it is, and get 8,000 likes or 13 or 4 or whatever the amount is, and they're just Instagram famous. And all of us we're all fighting our way out of that, and we want our pictures to be seen. But being popular on social media is important for some people, especially if you want to, you know, do workshops or you want endorsements or you just want that hit of pleasure when you get, you know, you get that kind of support from your following. But sometimes taking important pictures is hard to do, and they're not easily accepted, and you have to still take those. And I'm telling myself this because I walk past scenes on the street and I say, I'm not going to photograph that because I know if I do, I'm going to take a whole lot of shit for it. Excuse my language.
No,
but the photos need to be taken because we're living in a time where there are a lot of people being left behind. So whether I don't just take photos of homeless people. A lot of my feed is street photos. You know, it's not homeless. I'm known for that on Skid Row, but, you know, I think that whatever you're photographing, you have to tell the truth. And it isn't just about taking a picture that's going to get a lot of likes from a lot of people who don't really care about what you're doing. And I'll tell you the truth, those comment pods that you mentioned, I'm gonna tell you a secret to anybody that's listening to this. I look at some of those comment pods on other people's galleries, and some of the comments are so outrageous and ridiculous that I will unfollow people who make those comments. So if I've unfollowed you, it's because you comment too much banal commentary on pictures that don't warrant it. It's this game people play.
Yeah.
And I think it's horrible, and it's not very smart. And so it disgusts me to the point to where I'll see it and I'll lose it. I'll be like, that's it. I can't follow this because this person's insincere.
Yeah,
Sorry.
we get a lot of that on with Capture Streets. The whole point of why we started that was to find the photographers that only have 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 400, you know, whatever the low number may be, and then post those images. But these days it's so hard to find those photographers now, because even when we're checking the Capture Streets hashtag, we don't get all the people that are hashtagging. We only see the highest. The ones
I know, and it takes you forever to scroll through it all.
Definitely.
You know, I agree, but you know what? The thing is that I think. Here's what I really think, and it's not a nice thing to say, but I think that if you really want to be a good photographer or a competent photographer, a great photographer, then you really have to support work that has integrity. And that, you know, on Instagram, unfortunately, we're talking a lot about Instagram, but the thing is Instagram is really important for a lot of us because it's the primary way we show our images.
Yeah.
And the trouble is that when the feed is curated by an algorithm and it's allowing us to see what most people like, it's showing us in many instances, while it may be technically good, it could be somewhat mediocre as far as the content is concerned. And that's the truth. So we need to support artists that are doing things their way, whether it's me or anybody or you or whoever it is, and understand that the amount of likes that you see on Instagram is not a barometer of the quality of the image.
Of the work, no, definitely not.
Right.
Yeah.
There, a lot of those pictures, a lot of those photos are inoffensive. They're taken by people that don't want to offend. They're pretty pictures. They're pictures that you will see on the elevator on the way up to the 10th floor to an expensive dermatologist's office. Okay? That's the truth. Okay, and they're good, and some of them are better than what I do technically, and I'm not knocking it. There's room for that. But in the genre of street photography, first and foremost, it is social documentary work. So take a look at Helen Levitt or Bruce Davidson or Bruce Gilden's stuff, early stuff, and there's a whole lot of people I could name. I mean, and try to go back to the roots a little bit, because we're kind of losing sight of street photography when we're getting too much into the gimmicky aspects of it. One thing I wanted to touch on, though, is I get a lot of questions. People are always messaging me about how I connect with people and how I get these pictures. And do I shoot in a clandestine way? Do I sneak the picture?
Yeah.
And the answer is that you can see this camera. It's got this big lens on it. And the answer is no. I'm right out there. I'm really obvious.
Pretty hard to hide it.
No, I'm right there. And I'll tell you, sometimes I'm surprised they let me do it. And I will often just start talking to people. If I think that I'm not going to get a picture unless I connect with them, I'll be like, hey, I'm taking pictures here, or I really like your hat, or, I'm a street photographer and I take a lot of portraits. It would be okay if I took your picture. You just have to just get out there and just ask them and talk to them. And sometimes you get a no, and sometimes you don't.
I've never myself really understood that sort of sneaky way of taking pictures.
No, I don't like it.
I think it's creepy. It's more the whole zoom lens thing behind a bush trying to get a picture of someone, and there's a lot of that, and like there's no connection. I don't think, and I don't necessarily believe that also you have to get as close as the person. If you're not close enough, if it's not a good picture, you're not close enough. But I mean, there's fantastic pictures from a distance as well. But just that whole hiding the cameras, and I find that quite strange. I know
you mean like shooting from the hip and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, more people. I mean, here in Sweden, you see some people go around and they have this sort of camera hiding behind their jacket. Do you know what I mean? And then just with a lens poking out. And then go around. You want to know something? If you shoot like that in Los Angeles, you're going to get beat up. You know something? Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I have shot with people that shoot super duper fast. And no, I don't always ask it. Somebody just said, so you're always asking to take a picture. No, not at all. A lot of my street shots, I don't ask. I just do it, if it's a street scene. But they see me. And sometimes the picture gets ruined because they move when they see me. But for a street portrait, I ask, I don't really do candid portraits very often. Candid meaning where the person doesn't give me permission. And yes, I mean, getting beat up. When you sneak a picture, if you're standing there and you're pretending not to take a picture in downtown Los Angeles and you get caught, that's just that is creepy. I agree. And I have shot pictures with people that do that really fast kind of deal where they take, and I wouldn't do it again. I don't like that kind of photography, and I think it is sneaky. I think that irritates people more. That irritates people more than they realize. Actually.
Yes, it does. And also, I think that it reflects in the photo too. There are these really fast pictures that sometimes a really fast shot. Like if you have the Fujifilm cameras that are so fast at street work, and I love them dearly. You can take a really fast shot, and sometimes they're awesome. Like if I walk and shoot, sometimes I love to do that. This camera is not a walking and shooting camera unless you're zone focused.
I have the X. I have the XT2, and
Okay.
I have a little Ricoh GR2 as well,
Okay.
which is pretty much the size of your iPhone, but it's got an APS-C sensor, and that
Okay.
has a snap focus function on it. So you can, it's pretty much like zone focus. It is zone focusing, and that you just set it to F8, and you don't even have to think about the focus. You just, it's almost like putting it into manual focus.
Yes.
And that takes, there's zero time. There's zero focusing time on that, and it allows you to not think about it. I don't know what mode. How do you shoot modes wise, and when you're on the street? I don't even think about it. I just put it in P mode. I don't care manual or no manual. I just use the exposure compensator.
I don't do that. I don't even know how to use that. I have it all in manual and just hope for the best. I make a lot of mistakes. I don't know how to use that. There is one thing I wanted to talk briefly about. Someone had asked, you had mentioned to me you got some messages about me and my ethics and how I justify some photos. So ethics is really important to talk about in street photography because especially with social media, we have the opportunity, especially some of us who have a large following, we can take a photo and blast it out over the internet and have thousands of people see this image of someone that did not want their photo taken. So I think that there are some people out there that take some pretty nasty pictures that are based on someone's body weight, or, I mean, you can build a great street photo around an unusual body type, and I do that. I have a lot of pictures like that. But I think that ethically, I think we do need to think about when we post pictures of people, really thinking about, and it's a real gray area because I have pictures that aren't flattering, a lot of them. But I think that ethically, we are putting pictures of people who don't necessarily want to be in our photo. They didn't get up that morning. I said this when I did a talk somewhere. Nobody gets up in the morning and wants to be in a street photo that's seen by thousands of people making rotten comments or funny comments on Instagram or anywhere else. So ethically, I think that we do need to consider that, and it's a fine line we walk. As well, as far as shooting pictures of homeless people, homelessness is one of the greatest disabilities that our society faces, especially in the United States and in all over the world, refugees. I think that we need to photograph it because it's really important. We need to do so ethically, which means not taking pictures of sleeping people and, trying to build it into a street scene in a ethical manner. But when I get questions about ethics, it really pisses me off because, there's a lot of documentary people out there making big bucks from taking pictures of some very vulnerable refugees and starving people and all kinds of people. And they're famous people making tons of money and getting awards for these photos. So because they're famous, they're untouchable. Those of us on Instagram, some of us are perceived as being more of a target. I think that anytime you're doing documentary photography of any kind, you are having to take the risk of having people not like it. And it's a difficult choice to make, but it's important to take pictures that are hard to look at, whether or not someone agrees with you or not.
We get that a lot as well with the feature page. That it's a huge divider in street photographers. Some people are completely against it, and some people think that it should be documented. And usually, the only reason which I get in touch with it, or I find, is that people who are against it, they just that shouldn't be photographed. They're already in a bad situation. They shouldn't be taken advantage of. But just like you're saying, it depends how you're doing it, what you're doing it for, what's the purpose for taking the image. Also,
you mentioned something about being taken advantage of. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I do it a lot. I told you, I think on the message, that you need to corral me a little bit if I talk too much.
No one wants to hear me talk.
This is important. Every single time you pick up the camera and you take a picture of someone, you are exploiting that person, okay? If you are posting it on social media, or you are having it published in the New York Times, or you are entering it into a contest, you have taken a photograph of someone else, attached your name to it, and you are getting some benefit from it, whether you're getting likes or you're trying to win an award, you have taken a photograph of someone and you are benefiting from it. So every time we take a picture, we are exploiting somebody. And the thing is there are some pretty famous people out there that find some pretty interesting homeless faces and take pictures of them and make a lot of money off of them. And in order to deflect some of this criticism, you have people starting foundations and talking about empathy and all this other stuff. When the bottom line is that we are photographing people we think are interesting, that we have decided from an objective standpoint that are interesting to other people. We are not photographing your average guy at his son's baseball team, you know, his baseball game, wearing a baseball cap, a white t-shirt, and cargo shorts. He's not interesting to most people. We are finding interesting faces and situations, and we are all exploiting them, whether you are famous and you've won World Press Photo or you are an Instagrammer with 400 followers. Okay, so
that's a very good point.
That's the truth. That's what I think.
That's a good point. It's a classic dividing argument, I think, and that's why I really wanted to have you on, because it's pretty much all of your work is in that divide in some way. But everyone else sees it as art as long as you are a known name.
Yes, I think
that's pretty much saying your point, yeah.
I think that famous people, like we have a president, I don't want to get into politics, but, you know, people who have money and fame, or who get a lot more, who have more, you know, they're famous, however you want to define that, there's a different set of rules for those people. So before I did this interview, I went on some websites of some famous documentary photographers who you could argue are better than me or better than you or whoever. I don't care about who's better, okay? But they're more famous, okay? And while the images may be sensitive, they are taken of people in very dire circumstances, rape victims who are crying, starving people from Africa. And these people didn't really get a whole lot of benefit from being photographed. The photographer may have published in the New York Times or in the Washington Post or in the Guardian. But the people being photographed are living a horrendous and hellish existence. So I think that we can be as empathetic, and we can say how sensitive we are, and we can come across as being erudite, and we can come across as being compassionate, but ultimately there is a certain level of callousness that you must have as a photographer to take some of these pictures, and I have it, and otherwise you wouldn't be able to take the picture, because, you know, if you're afraid to take a photo and you feel uncomfortable, you're not going to get the image. You may have the artistic sensibility, but you also have to have a level of callousness and a level of maybe even a little arrogance to take a photograph of someone in a situation that's pathetic or that's difficult. And I'm talking about the documentary side of what I do. And I've never photographed people that are starving or in a war. I might be traveling in the fall to a place where it is very difficult, and I'm very hopeful that that happens. But I think,
is that something you can talk about?
It isn't right now, because I'm waiting to see if they can get it funded. It's something that I want to do very much, because I'm a single parent. I can't just take off all the time. And you know, getting started in photography as a business is very hard. I don't have a mentor. I don't have any real connections. I'm on my own with this, so it's very hard to get started. But to come back to that ethics thing, I think that when people start to throw the ethical rock in your face, what that does is it is a very effective censor. It is a way to censor us, each other, because a lot of people don't want to be thought of as being unethical or a bad person for taking a photo. So what happens is people are afraid to take certain pictures, and that's not a good thing, you know? It's not good.
Sure. I'm trying to find there was a comment a little bit further down, which someone said, Suzanne, your pictures of homeless are not dehumanizing them, but humanizing them.
You know something, I hope that they do. I think that homeless people, I don't even like the word homeless. I don't want to use it. But the thing is that people without shelter are people. And unfortunately, a lot of times in our country, most of my pictures of homeless people have been published in Europe and not in the United States, because I think that we're too squeamish to want to deal with it. And I think that even when I was featured in the LA Times, they're doing a series on homelessness, but they didn't use any of my most striking images of homelessness, because I think that there's a desire with people to really just want to see it as a problem, and they don't really want to identify with homeless people.
No. What's that question? Suzanne, would you photograph the mess going on in Gaza?
I desperately want to go to Gaza. I wanted to go this summer. I have a situation with my son and my housing in New York. My son's in school here. So if I can get to Gaza, I'm going to go. I don't want to photograph in Gaza the way everybody does with Hamas. That's one of the things about Palestine that really drives me nuts. It's not all about Hamas. There's a whole lot of people there that need to be photographed as people and not as some kind of terrorist group. People hear the word Palestinian, and I grew up in the 70s, and you associate that with bad person. And I really think that an amazing, I don't even want to talk about it. I'll just get upset. I really want to go. Yes.
Yes, the short answer is yes.
That was a yes.
You make a lot of interesting points about ethics. You said every photo exploits someone, so that's the downside. What's the benefit? Comes from BV Street.
Okay, so the benefit, gosh, I just love taking pictures, and if I can capture the person and the situation, and I can capture the irony and the narrative, that's the benefit for me. It's getting the picture, I got the picture, but the benefit is that I think, as I said earlier, it is really, really, our society, I mean, people say this throughout the ages. Every 50 years, people are saying that people are less and less considerate towards each other. But with the internet and there's so much me out there, I really believe that we are less sensitive towards each other, especially with all of these images of violence and sex and all this other stuff. I think that it's really important to take pictures of people, whether the person is homeless or it's a little girl in a department store or it's a moment between a mother and daughter on the subway. They're images of people that we can look at and connect with, and they can cross the bounds of race and class. And that's what my aim is when I take a picture, I want people to look at my photo and say, I can identify with this woman and her daughter on the train. Their skin is not the same color as mine, but I get it. I can see that. And I'm going to say something else here that my dad might tell me, don't say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I believe that there is a lot of racism, and I see it on my gallery. When I post certain images, I have images, street pictures that are more on the documentary side, that are in neighborhoods that are of color that don't get nearly the attention that they should. And they're important street pictures because they're of a neighborhood that is invisible to a lot of society. And I think that it's really important to have pictures like that, because the idea is to bring us together with these pictures. I would suggest looking at Helen Levitt's images. Helen Levitt was such a wonderful photographer. No gimmicks, no bullshit, just great street photos. And Bruce Davidson was a genius. And these are pictures that I don't feel that the photographer was using the subjects to get attention necessarily. They were honestly trying to document a situation.
Capture space and time. That was going to be one of my other questions. Who influences you?
I think that I only started taking pictures 3 years ago. So when I was younger, I loved photographs. I loved to stumble on a book of photos. I grew up, my dad is Jewish, so I grew up with a lot of images of the Holocaust, black and whites, that I thought really shaped me in a lot of ways, especially images of Poland and the villages that were wiped out because they were exterminated. And also images Minimata, that essay. These are images from maybe from, over the last 70 years. So in my mind, that is street photography. When I see the shadow and the light play and all this black and white stuff, I'm really seriously going to go out on a limb and say I don't even consider that to be really street photography. It's photography, but to me, street photography is much more of an old school appreciation of it. So those are my influences, just black and whites that I saw as a child. Pictures like Henri Huet was a French war photographer. He took a lot of amazing images of the Vietnam War. I didn't see that question. Somebody said Suzanne. Did you see that one? I didn't see it.
I don't think there was a question attached to it.
It was right before this one. Dollar there? I can't tell what it is. I'm sorry. I missed that. If you want to repeat that, then I can read it. So Henri Huet was a French war photographer, and he died taking pictures, and his images were amazing. And those are the kinds of pictures that I think of. I think of that picture of the little girl running down the road in Vietnam after she'd had her clothes blown off, by napalm. I'm not saying that every picture has to be that dramatic. I'm saying, though, that I think of street photography more in those terms as opposed to what the modern take, like lens culture, when they feature, I hate lens culture. I'm sorry, I hate them. It's a money-making deal, and I don't think that street photography benefits from awards. Did you ever see that question that person had?
No, I don't know. I've actually tried to scroll up, but I can't see it. It's not in English.
Oh, okay. I thought I saw something.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 comments, but it's not in English. And then it just says, Suzanne, where's the dollar there? I can't.
We hate lens culture also. Look, it's a photography thing, but, all these contests, these photography contests, these likes, I actually was a finalist once in lens culture. And then after that, I sent them some really, really good pictures. And they blew them off because they're too gritty. They pick pictures that are easy on the eyes every single time, just about. And then when they didn't, they got in big trouble for being exploitative, which they were. And Magnum Photos backed out of the contest game, it seems. Okay. And, so did you want to say something?
No, don't. Keep going.
Why is documentary street photography still relevant? Well, you know what? For a lot of people, it isn't really relevant, and that's a problem. So for me, it's really relevant because it's my thing. But, if you say lens culture to the average person on the street, or you show them a street photo, they don't care.
Yeah, most people
go, nobody cares about street photography. I mean, on most people, we care about it. I feel, though, you had asked me about my influences. So there's one person I didn't mention, and that is Norman Rockwell. I love Norman Rockwell. His photos, although his paintings were actually done from photos that he set up. So he set the narrative up, but they were narrative photos. They were narrative paintings that he did from his photos. And so I do think that street photography, I can't see this. Have you seen changes in your family and friends as a result of your photos?
Yeah, I saw that one. She's asked that question twice now. That's good.
Oh, okay. So that's an interesting question. Well, people just get awfully tired of it, of you taking pictures. I spend a lot of time doing it, and it's really, I work on it as a craft, and I think that I've changed exponentially as a human being. I think maybe people respect me more in my family, but I have a very small family. Some of my family I don't speak to because of some issues that they have and we all have. But I think that it can be hard for families to deal with if you have somebody that's really, really absorbed and completely, I think to do anything well, you have to be pretty obsessed with it. So sometimes it can take over and it can obscure the needs of others, which you have to watch.
That's true. I think that's a lesson for us all, I think. Definitely. What else have we got here? They just want money. We're back to the lens culture thing.
Yes, lens culture.
Real cool.
Talk about how you touch people and get such intimate access. So how do I talked about that a little earlier. I really like the people that I get intimate access to. I really like them and I'm very comfortable with them. And I'm very spontaneous and things just happen. So if I'm out on the street, okay, I went to Coney Island last Saturday. Here's an example. Last Saturday, I went to Coney Island. I've only been to Coney Island 2 or 3 times in my life. And when I went, I had a very bad stomach ache. I have a stomach issue because I have some food allergies and I was in a great deal of pain, but I went anyway. While I was on the train, I started photographing somebody with tattoos, and then I met these 2 sisters, these 2 young, one was about 9 and the other was 24. And they started asking me questions and I started talking to them, and I found out that one has been diagnosed with end-stage renal failure, and she was diagnosed with that at the age of 21. So I did some portraits of them that I feel capture my feeling about them and their closeness and togetherness. And so when someone asks how I approach people, sometimes they approach me, or sometimes I just start talking to them. I just ask them something. Very open. I just start talking to them, and sometimes it disarms them because they don't expect for somebody with a camera to just start talking. Usually there's an energy about someone that I find to be compelling and I'm drawn to it. And maybe on some level I sense that they would be open to me approaching them. Some people aren't open, and then they'll kind of assess you and then decide, okay, I'll let her take my picture. But ultimately, when you approach someone, when I first started doing this, I was terrified to do that. Now I do it every single day, you know. And you also have to be willing to touch people, whether they're homeless or they're dirty or not. I hug people. I hug people with head lice. You know, I have done that. And, you know, you have to be really willing to get close. I mean, you know, not always. I'm talking about for some intimate stuff. You have to really be willing to smell stuff, or I have asthma. Sometimes I breathe stuff that makes me sick, you know, but I have to get through it.
That's an interesting question.
What do I want the world to remember most about me? Boy, I don't know. I don't want them to remember me. I just want them to remember my pictures. I really mean that. I have some pictures that I think that really mean a lot to me. I don't want to tear up, but some of the photos that I've done of this little girl named Heaven and her mother, that's a tragedy, which I won't elaborate on right now, but I want people to look at people like Heaven and not overlook them when they run across them in their lives. So if somebody can remember me, look at my pictures and connect with people and try to see them as people. And I don't know, that's a tough question to answer. I'm kind of faltering. I'm sorry.
Good question, though. I think going back to what you said earlier about someone asked a question about is the landscape of where you live, does that help to make a good photo? And I think personally myself, I find it seems like America, especially New York, seems to be a sort of a benchmark. If you say street photography, you automatically think of people in New York. I do anyway. And I'm always trying to find things in my environment here in Uppsala in Sweden that would try and recreate that vibe. But
that's a mistake. You know why?
People want to see where I live, and people want to see where you live and where.
No, New York and Paris and LA and London, these are popular. And India, everybody's going to India. Okay, India. Okay, but these are just stereotypes. Okay, there are people out there taking wonderful street pictures in like Meryl Streep taking pictures in the Netherlands, and she's taken her environment and she photographs it with pieces of herself and pieces of the place. And there's ways to photograph of Natalie Santa Fe. She does minimalist street photography in New Mexico. So you can find ways to document your world that suit you and your world. You don't have to be in New York City. I happen to be in New York City partly because of my son. I don't want to be in New York City. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to make the best of it for as long as I can, and then I'm going to leave. But I think that it's another pressure of social media and pressure of, you know, famous photos or whatever. In New York, the thing about being in New York is I can put together a photograph, a narrative photograph using people on the street, and I can tell a story. It's almost like an Aesop's fable. It's like a little parable. And that's awesome because there's so much to pick from here in New York City. But you have to take your own creativity and artistry, and you can apply that to wherever you are. And so, as I mentioned, Natalie Santa Fe, who applies a minimalist sensibility to her pictures of New Mexico. We have people in, you know, all over that do pictures of their world. And some people choose to take photos that are a little bit, maybe they're grasping for likes a little bit, you know, stereotypes. But the point is that you don't have to be in a big city like New York to make great street pictures. You can be in a very small town. You just have to, it's just something you have to
find the subjects and find them. Yeah. Had someone wrote, I shoot in a city with only 10,000 people.
Yeah, I saw that. And what's wrong? You know, that's great. You know, I mean, look, a lot of times when you have an account that gets really popular, maybe that happens as a result of shooting in a place that has wide appeal, like in New York or Los Angeles, you know, wherever you are. But the thing is that, again, we're talking about people looking for that big hit. We're looking for that stimulation from a photo. Wow, look at that. That's New York. Well, there's something that might have every bit as much merit that came from Akron, Ohio. You know what I mean? And those are the pictures that we really need to seek out and find. I'm beginning to think more and more that's really critical, because street photography, if we let people like Lens Culture and some of these other blogs and Instagram dictate it, we're just going to have a collection of technically perfect pictures that have endorsements from brands that don't tell any stories and that are disconnected from the street. And street photography should have some connection to the street, whether you're photographing signage or a person on the street. There needs to be some connection. So however you form a connection with whatever city or town you're living in, that's street photography, and it's every bit as important as something that comes from London, you know?
Definitely. What is your take on the street photography? We just did that one. That was interesting. What are your thoughts on Vivian Mayer never showing her work to anybody, and why you think she never even developed most of her roles?
Well, first of all, she probably shot so many damn pictures that she didn't have time to develop them all. And you forget, I have SD cards. My bed is my desk. I share a small apartment with my son. So I have tons of SD cards of pictures I haven't even looked at, man, okay? I don't have time to look at all these pictures, okay? She didn't have time to do it all. She probably forgot how many pictures she had. And plus, she was a pure photographer. This woman was out there for the joy of photography. She didn't give a shit about how many likes she got, because she was out there documenting her world, okay? And she was taking pictures of what she saw and what moved her, and she never once thought about whether or not you or me liked her work. And that's the way it should be. And when you have people trolling your account and sending you rotten comments, these people are garbage, and you have to get away from that, because really Vivian Mayer is who you're asking about. That is like the purest approach there is, taking the photos for the joy of doing it and not caring about whether it hangs in a gallery or it is in a newspaper. And I'm not one of those people. I want lots of people to see my pictures, not necessarily on Instagram, okay? Because I have a driving need to photograph some of my subjects. I'm really have a lot of reasons, personal reasons for that. But I think that she was a pure human being.
Have you checked out Don McCullen's work?
Oh, I've heard that name, and I might have. I don't know. I don't really look at too many other photographers, honestly.
Is it also a war photographer?